How many people do we have?
Let's see. Yeah, so we'll leave it open for a few minutes and let people join in at their own speed, and then can slowly get started.
Yeah, sounds good.
I believe we also have Alisia from Botanix here, who will be joining us.
Yeah, we'll give it a few minutes or so.
Yeah, perfect.
I guess while we're waiting, Alisia, is the Botanix team going to be at DevCon?
Yes, we are.
Nice. Are you guys giving a talk there, or have you got a booth people can go to?
We're not doing booths or any events, so I'm just speaking at a ton of panels.
Nice. Yeah, I think it'll be quite a good one. DevCon is usually pretty good, and in Bangkok, I think it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I was actually not supposed to go, but then I FOMO'd into going, so now I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think it's a
And we're
very,
doing,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, I said we're doing Staking Summit right before. So yeah, doing
Nice.
Staking Summit, DEF CON, and then SmartCon next week.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really good excuse to travel, isn't it? It's hard to say no to Bangkok, especially when you've got so many cool events to go to and different crypto parties and stuff.
Absolutely. I have very controversial takes on conferences. But I think in general, DEF CON is one of the better ones.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it also seems like Bitcoin or BTCfi is taking over every supposed Ethereum conference these days. So it's always fun to go and,
yeah,
I guess, push Bitcoin a little bit.
Watch them seethe and cope and stuff like that. Yeah. You can probably
Alisia, is anyone else from Botanix joining, or is it you leading the way here?
I think it'll just be me.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, we've got quite a few listeners now, so we can maybe kick things off. I know everyone's got a lot of work to do. And the spaces will be recorded, so you can always refer back to it. And yeah, we should get more listeners coming in as we get started. So we're very lucky to have Alisia from Botanix with us today for our current episode of Yala Spaces. I guess we can just dive straight into it. Alisia, maybe you can introduce a little bit about who you are, what you do at Botanix, and perhaps most importantly, tell us a bit more about Spider Chain and what you guys are doing to empower the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Sure. Thanks for that intro. So my name is Alisia. I'm originally Canadian, but now based in New York after having spent time in many different parts of the world. And actually, my experience around the world, and especially in emerging markets, it's really what brought me to Bitcoin. So I first bought Bitcoin in 2015 as a cross-border remittance solution. Back then, we were buying Bitcoin with cash at Bitcoin meetups, and yeah, it's really cool to see the evolution of the space since, and especially that experience in emerging markets has really brought me back into Bitcoin after having spent most of the past decade in Ethereum, because I really see Bitcoin as like the winning money. It's by far proven the test of time. It is still the only decentralized cryptocurrency in the world, permissionless, and has never failed us, right? My role at Botanix is I'm one of the founders. I'm the COO, so responsible for the business side of things. We started Botanix about 2 years ago. Honestly, 2 years ago, there really wasn't much happening in Bitcoin, right? So there's only really a few Bitcoin L2s out there, and neither of them had achieved any sort of product market fit. And what we basically saw when we looked around at the market was, maybe it was the lack of the EVM that was holding Bitcoin back from achieving greater programmability. So that was the initial insight that we were working with. My co-founder Willem is a cryptographer, so we spent the first 6 months just building out the Spider Chain white paper, which is our approach to Bitcoin scaling. Um, I won't get too technical, but what you need to know about the Spider chain is it's a completely new layer 2 primitive, very, very different from any other Bitcoin L2 solution out there. It's a network of decentralized multisigs that's secured by a proof of stake consensus mechanism. And what that enables you to do is essentially build a fully decentralized layer 2 that inherits most of Bitcoin security as well as finality, and allows us to run actually on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is our gas token settlement layer, and we're also by far the most performant Bitcoin L2. So very fast, very cheap. We started built out the team, went on testnet last year. So I think testnet v0 were released in November of last year, so well before Bitcoin season two. I think we preempted a lot of that narrative, and we've been building steadily ever since and preparing for testnet v1 launch.
Very nice. Yeah, I connect with what you're saying about Bitcoin in the early days. So I was messing about with it around 2015 as well, and you're paying cash just for Bitcoin, and it was extremely rudimentary. But yeah, it's come so far in a short space of time, and now we've got Spider Chain and different L2s building, and the whole Bitcoin finance ecosystem emerging, which obviously loads of people are very excited about. So yeah, it sounds like you guys have preempted a number of different very positive trends. So talking about your testnet a bit, we've obviously just recently launched Yala's testnet, which has been very positive so far. We've had over 4,000 Bitcoin contributed onto the platform, testnet, of course, thousands of different users. Maybe you can share a bit about your experience with the Botanix testnet, sort of what you've learned, or how transforming that concept into reality has gone so far, and maybe even a little bit of alpha, perhaps, about what's coming down the line with mainnet and so on.
Yeah. So several things. So yeah, we released our testnet almost a year ago. And one thing that was really, really important for us was tangibilizing some of the use cases that are possible on Bitcoin, right? So it's really interesting. We spoke to hundreds of Bitcoiners in the lead up to our testnet, and they were so unfamiliar with the EVM ecosystem. We had to explain to them, even what is MetaMask, right? So on our previous testnet landing page, we even had all of these instructions on how to set up MetaMask or any sort of EVM wallet, because the average Bitcoiner is so unfamiliar with the EVM tools that you and I might be familiar with, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was really important for us to be very focus on the education component of it,
Mhm.
decoupling EVM, the cryptocurrency, decoupling Ethereum, the cryptocurrency, from EVM, which is the execution environment that we're in, listing out the tools that are available for folks, and then even bringing to life some use cases. So we
Yeah.
actually built our own test decks. It was called Avocado Swap, honestly deployed by a few of our team members, just to show people what it's like to swap, in a Bitcoin environment using Bitcoin as a gas token, just to show what it's like to set up a liquidity pool, what it's like to deploy a meme coin contract. And
Mhm.
honestly, showing and bringing to life some of those use cases is what enabled us to get a lot of live feedback from users, both from our community as well as beyond our community,
Yeah.
and really bring the concept of Bitcoin to life, right? Because Bitcoin, as you and I and everyone in this line knows, has just been it's the asset that has stood the test of time, but it's also been stagnant in terms of further use cases, right? And so I think just bringing those use cases to life was a massive unlock for us, and also it helped us attract more builders who could see, the broader vision of what we were trying to build out for.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really good, because you're right. I guess Bitcoin's obviously the soundest crypto. It's the soundest money we've had, but it has been a bit of a pet rock in terms of what is actually going on in the industry and what's possible with blockchains. So yeah, it's good that you guys have sort of unleashed that a little bit. But yeah, I can imagine it's very difficult to educate Bitcoin people in particular about MetaMask and Ethereum and maybe even DeFi generally. I'd imagine that's going to be even trickier when you sort of when you expand into non-EVMs, maybe even like Cosmos or other different, or Solana and so on. I guess you guys have a sort of plan for that, or you've got a system in place on the educational side for onboarding new users.
Yeah, I think our plan in terms of supporting execution environments is to start with the EVM, just because for all of the critiques, right, leveled towards the EVM, it is still the execution environment that has stood the test of time as well. Like if you think about VMs as a software layer, right? It's the one that is by far the most lindy, right, in terms of number of devs, tooling, ecosystem. So, I'm not technical, and even I can deploy a smart contract on Solidity, and I think that's the power of the EVM. However, we are keenly observing market dynamics, especially in terms of emerging VMs like Solana VM, Mu VM. I think we're even looking at WASM as a potential and blended execution environments, which I think is really promising, just in terms of upping the performance, getting to more real time, use cases as well as execution times. So I think our roadmap is to start with the EVM, but then also keenly look out at some of the other VMs out there, and support all of those. And yeah, I think there's a lot of education to be done, in terms of EVM, how to interact with the AVM, in terms of DeFi, right? Because the whole, I guess, business case for Bitcoin L2s and Bitcoin DeFi is to bring Bitcoiners online, right? The ones that have never DeFi'd before, that have never really transacted on chain before, aside from, buy, sell, hodl. And for that set of users, there's just a lot of work and education that needs to be done. One thing that I've really noticed is, they don't understand the mechanics of DeFi. They don't understand things like points, right? So just there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done, and the onus is on platforms like us and like Yala to really do a lot of that heavy lifting, and explain the value of actually transacting on chain with your Bitcoin.
100%, yeah. I mean, I guess in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there's the mentality of never sell, always hold, and just wait for 5-10 years, even longer, and just watch your Bitcoin grow in value. But I think there's probably a growing number of people in that community who want to unlock that capital, want to learn how to actually put it to use in the meantime to make it capital efficient and so on. So there's obviously a huge audience there, huge market, and yeah, Bitcoin DeFi needs to be
Yeah.
built out. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm quite a Bitcoin maxi now, and I speak to a lot of Bitcoin maxis, and a lot of them are still not convinced at this concept of transforming Bitcoin beyond a store of value. But the thing
Yeah.
is, if we don't enable utility for Bitcoin beyond store of value, it's going to inevitably decline, right? You see
Yeah.
that with every single store of value in the world, right?
Mhm.
If there isn't greater utility attributed to that specific medium, it will decline. So I think the onus is also on the Bitcoin maxis to
Yeah.
accept that and to help enable that transformation,
I,
beyond just a store value.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a bit of a journey because there's been this tribalism for quite a while now between the Bitcoin maxis and ETH maxis and stuff. And the Bitcoin maxis have loved the idea that we're just a simple store of value with digital gold. But you're right in what you say is that's it has to evolve from that to be a combination of things, which I guess can only benefit everybody in the Bitcoin and outside the Bitcoin space.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's important for Bitcoiners, right, to become, I think Bitcoiners and ETH maxis and Sol maxis, I think there's still a lot of tribalism, right, within cryptocurrency. And in a way, it fuels the industry a lot, right? That level of tribalism. But I do think that the more collaboration and the more we think beyond CT
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah,
100,000 active users there are within on-chain crypto, that's when it's truly going to become more transformative, more mainstream, and we
yeah.
can think about onboarding millions, right? Because I mean, I've had this discussion with so many people. Honestly, there's maybe about 100,000 power users in DeFi, right? We're a very small industry. And we need to really think about making crypto accessible for the masses, and that's only going to come with one, collaboration, and two, with Bitcoin at the forefront. Because if you think about just in terms of mainstream adoption and acceptance, right? There's nothing that comes close to Bitcoin. I mean, our parents will not touch Solana. They will probably only think about Bitcoin, right? So I think that level of acceptance is something that obviously Bitcoin has as a massive advantage.
A major advantage, yeah. And a good example of that is obviously BlackRock has adopted Bitcoin. Sort of TradFi is starting to take it much more seriously, and TradFi is the kind of environment that is going to want to make their Bitcoin capital efficient anyway. So it's definitely going in that direction for sure. And yeah, as the
Yeah.
space grows, tribalism will diminish, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite political, so I I have very, I guess, conflicting takes on the growing encroachment of TradFi within Bitcoin. However,
Mhm.
the one inevitable, upside and advantage of that, of course, is the fact that Bitcoin has become too big to fail, right? So if you just look at the way that the US financial system works, how the political economy in the US works, right? Once you have some of the largest financial institutions in the world um, investing and buying Bitcoin so heavily, it has become this entity which is inevitably too big to fail. So I think
Yeah,
that is a very, very positive market dynamic and indicative of the up only trend, I think, for Bitcoin. However, obviously that comes with a lot of disadvantages as well, right? Because it does pose a threat to the inherent decentralization of Bitcoin, right?
yeah,
You're also already starting to see that with, manipulations and price movements. But I think on the whole, it is very positive and it's going to push crypto forward.
yeah. And I think it will also definitely stabilize some of the predictable cyclical volatility we've seen in the general space, which will be positive definitely for more serious players and steady, serious growth.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I mean, I started trading, yeah, in roughly in 2016 and like the whole ICO era. It was a lot easier to make money back then, right?
yeah,
I think the alpha is harder to come by these days, but I think that's almost indicative of the industry becoming more professional and growing up, which
yeah,
again is very positive. And I think and I think almost outlines the opportunity, right? So at Botanix Labs, are really driven by, building for a world that runs on Bitcoin, right?
yeah,
And I think there's a lot to explore there, right? Let's think about the way that the global financial system works, how TradFi works. There's the opportunity to transform every single one of those structures into one that's on chain, decentralized, democratic, and accessible. And I think
yeah,
that's a powerful mission to work towards beyond just, the alpha of the early days.
yeah. I completely agree. I guess to bring it back to Botanix directly, in the last year or so, we have seen a flurry of new activity within the Bitcoin space. Various layer twos, various different side chains, and attempts to, I guess, do what you guys are doing. So, I guess compared to all of those, could you maybe explain the core advantages or your outstanding features uh, at Botanix, or
Yeah,
recap?
happy to. I mean, I can explain both from a technological and a business point of view how we're very different. I think I encourage everyone to examine every single one of these projects with a healthy degree of skepticism, like Dior, including for us, right? I think the number one thing I always tell folks is that it's really, really tough to build on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a very adversarial protocol, and that's by design, right? Bitcoin is designed to be tough to build on, to make it almost ossified and difficult to change, which is also why it has stood the test of time, right? So we've been building for 2 years, and it takes time, right, to build something that actually runs on Bitcoin. I think the main thing that differentiates us, I would say, compared to everyone else, is our ruthless focus on decentralization. So, on our team at Botanix, I'm the only person I think with an Ethereum background. Everyone else is a pretty hardcore Bitcoiner and Bitcoin maxi, and I think the one thing I've learned, working with Bitcoiners, is that it's decentralization at the end of the day that keeps Bitcoin what it is and will continue to make Bitcoin flourish, right? So that is a center of everything we do, not just from, a technical architecture perspective, but also from an infrastructure perspective. We're starting with a federation of 15 nodes. We're only running one of them. So decentralization is truly core to everything that we do. And I do
Yeah,
believe like there's going to be multiple winners, right, in the Bitcoin space, in the L2 space, in the DeFi space. But I do think it's very, very important to have decentralization at its core. And that is something that really, really differentiates us. I think the other thing that I mentioned, like the fact that we actually run on Bitcoin, right? So our gas token is going to be Bitcoin, right?
of course.
We are not experimenting with with any different types of go-to-market measures that you see in Ethereum. So I think what we're trying to do is really build for the Bitcoiner use cases, right? So Bitcoiners are very averse to a lot of, the way that DeFi works in Ethereum. So just
Mhm.
keeping that in mind and building an entire ecosystem that is centered and anchored around what use cases would be most pertinent, I think is what really differentiates us. Um, and yeah, I would say that's it from like a technological as well as like business perspective. I think we're also going to be the first to ship mainnet, which is going to actually run on Bitcoin, right? So I do think building for that long and also having a pretty heavy Bitcoin dev team is what's going to enable us to be the first in the market.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really good. I like the idea that you're using Bitcoin as the gas token, and you're focusing on decentralization. That is definitely a very key point for the Bitcoin maxis and Bitcoin community at large. Obviously, not your keys, not your crypto is a very pertinent sort of state of mind, and that's got everything to do with decentralization. Talking about mainnet, I guess that's on the horizon. Can you give us more information about that? Maybe time frame or any exciting alpha that the community might be able to think about for when that comes?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we're preparing for. So let's say testnet v1, which is going to be our final version before mainnet, is coming out very soon. Working with the Yala team pretty closely on that because they're going to be one of the projects we heavily feature upon testnet v1 launch, and really excited to activate our community. We have the largest organic community in Bitcoin. So we've been building our community for a while, and it's really, really exciting to see them mobilize all over the world. So we have community ambassadors, and we've done events in like I think 7 different countries by now. It's really, really cool to see that community come to life, and we're excited to get them excited about Yala, about all of the other teams that are going to be featured with testnet v1, and mainnet is going to be a few months thereafter. So yeah,
Very
really exciting. Yeah.
lots to look forward to. So obviously we're going to be working together. Could you maybe share perhaps some other exciting partnerships, drop some names or
Yeah. So happy to drop some names. I would say that there's a few that we're going to be announcing over the next few days. So we're the first Bitcoin L2 that Chainlink is supporting, which is really exciting. Chainlink is finally expanding to Bitcoin and starting with us. We're announcing that tomorrow. But I think that's pretty well known in the community by now. We're also going to be announcing some tier one ETH DeFi protocols that are coming exclusively over to Botanix as their Bitcoin deployment, which is really exciting. And then aside from that, for testnet v1, I think there's obviously Yala, but then there's all of our other native ecosystem teams that we're going to be featuring, like Bitsy, Bitperp, Rover, Spindle, Palladium. And so we're excited to be, featuring every single one of those in the lead up to testnet v1. But I cannot spell any more names for now, unfortunately. You'll just have to follow us on Twitter and keep in touch.
nice? You've dropped enough. I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, I guess focusing on partnerships, could you maybe describe how you envisage the Botanix EVM and Yala working together to help redefine Bitcoin and Bitcoin DeFi?
Yeah, I mean, Yala, I see as one of the pathways to yield, right, on Bitcoin DeFi.
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, I think stablecoins are one of the biggest use cases for Bitcoin DeFi. So again, in a lot of the conversations I've had, with Bitcoiners, the number one thing that they want to do is use their Bitcoin as collateral, mint stable coins, and be able to access yield. And that is obviously one of the main pathways that Yala enables. So I do see that as, a cornerstone flagship use case. And I think what's really exciting about Botanix is the yield on, so we're a proof of stake chain, obviously, right? So that means that you stake Bitcoin, and that's what actually enables that shared security, right? And the yield that is accrued back to the stakers is in the form of Bitcoin, right? So we don't have any points yield, we don't have any token yield. This is all just naked yield, right? That comes from the transaction fees that are generated on the network, and that is very, very appealing, right? And that's why there's so much liquidity interest in Botanic specifically, is because we're taking a much more fundamentalist approach to yield, and I think
Yeah,
just access to that pure yield source is going to be very attractive for holders of Yala, and the Bitcoin community more broadly.
100%. Yeah. I like that approach. It's a bit different to what some other Bitcoin staking protocols, perhaps even like Solve,
It's
who
different
who
from every single it's different from
yeah,
every single other Bitcoin project out there, I think, which is why I think we're like massively oversubscribed always. Just
yeah,
because I think people are really excited to move beyond I guess the current DeFi business model, and just go back to the fundamentals. Like you're already seeing, you know, a lot of people debating the airdrop meta, the points meta. And I think we're going to see a return to those like early days of crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be, we're excited to participate in that.
Yeah. That sounds very good. Yeah. Bullish. Watch this space.
Awesome.
That does sound good. I had a quick question, more focused, I guess, on your brand and stuff. Out of curiosity, is there a story behind Spider and the name Botanix or anything like that?
Yeah, actually it's really funny. So Spider Chain, we were always known as Botanix, right? So my co-founder always named it Botanix. And then the way that our tech works, right? It's like this network of decentralized multisigs. And the best way to think of it is if you're familiar with Lightning and Lightning's channel factories, right? This is a more zoomed out version of Lightning's channel factories. So if you actually graphically draw out the spider chain, it looks a lot like a spider web,
Mm,
right? So that's
Yeah.
actually where the name spider chain comes from.
Yeah.
But we never really use that for marketing. And then when we released our white paper last year, there's this OG Bitcoiner. His name is Jameson Lopp. He's a very skeptical man. He tends to really be critical of most things in Bitcoin. But he reviewed our white paper and gave us a pretty glowing review, and he called us Spider Chain.
no,
And that's actually when the name popped off. And we've been kind of back and forth between SpiderChain and Botanix. I think our company and our product is officially called Botanix, but the primitive, like the tech that powers it, is called SpiderChain. But yeah, it's actually kind of cool that it came about organically, and some people really understand and vibe with the spider chain as like this
yeah,
completely new primitive or design mechanism. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own, which is really cool. What you love to see as a in terms of brand and marketing. And yeah, it's
honestly,
seems to be very well accepted within the Bitcoin community.
I think oftentimes it's the natural when it comes organically. That you get the best names or phrases even or idioms and so on. And yeah, I guess the way a spider looks or even a spider's web, for example, is it's good symbolism for what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely.
Nice. Okay. I think that covers most of the questions, I guess, from my end. I know time's pushing on a little bit. I think we're at 30 minutes or so now. So unless you've got any other points to say, or if Casper, you've got anything to chime in with, perhaps we can start to wrap it up.
Awesome. No, thanks so much for having me. Always fun to chat about Bitcoin with our friends at Yala. I guess stay tuned. So we're preparing for Testnet V1 launch. We're going to be posting a lot on our official Twitter. So stay tuned and obviously follow along with Yala as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone, and appreciate
All
you
right.
joining us. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care.